Welcome back to the ROKK Rundown. I have some questions today about words that we're not going to say out loud, but they are specific to something that happened this week on Sunday. If you're reflecting on the Truth Social post that the president offered with the F word in it, do you think he reset the standard for language in communications this week?
No. And the reason why is that I think there's a singularity with what the president does and doesn't do. Also, when it comes out of his mouth, I think whatever it is that you say, it needs to sound authentic, right? And, with everything that he has said before and done before, whatnot, I'm not sure people blinked. I think also the fact that it came on Easter, which is, shame on you, Mr. President, that you would say such a thing on Easter. I think that it was ignored, but I think there's a larger piece to this, and I couple it with the threats that he made later this week to Iran. It wasn't that it was a bad word and it's going to, turn people off. I think that in a way it reeked of desperation. It sounded as though it didn't come from a place of strength. And I look at it and I parse this in a couple of different ways. One, it's like, well, I'm going to say this. Who is your audience? Because it wasn't the Iranians. I'm not sure if someone said to him, well, this is how the Iranians talk. So, if you really want to get them to open up the strait, drop an F-bomb, don't drop real bombs, drop an F-bomb, and then all of a sudden the strait's going to open. So that's the first thing. So then the second piece is like, so if it's not he who he's talking to, it's like, well, you got all your allies and what have you, and they're all kind of sitting here scratching their head being like, who are you talking to? What are you trying to prove or whatnot? And then you double down with this, talk of ending a civilization. And it didn't sound as though it sounded as though he was more frustrated that he has not been able to figure out a way for the Iranians to do what he wanted to do, than it came from a position of strength. So
that's a smart take.
So that was my take on it.
Yeah. What do you say, Ron?
Yeah, I would say I thought Easter really deserved better. But this has happened now in the Trump administration and in the Biden administration as well. Easter's gotten the short end of the stick, which is really frustrating. That is a holy day that millions of Americans celebrate, and it's frustrating to not have a recognition of that. In the Biden administration, they announced, I remember Easter morning, or maybe it was after, I can't remember, but it was Easter. That they had decided to recognize that day as National Trans Day, for lack of a better term. I can't remember the exact official thing. And I thought to myself, you could have done that on any day of the week, but you chose Easter and you didn't recognize Easter. I don't understand why either administration that's a time, it's a very holy time, a very special time for families to take a moment and take a breath away from politics, away from the national arena, and spend time with each other, usually, and both decided to, maybe it was a poke in the eye. I don't know what it was.
Yeah. Do you think, Ron, as a follow-up, do you think it sounds to you like you personally think it was an error, but was it strategy on their part to use Easter as a time, or was it?
Well, I absolutely for Donald Trump, because people were taking their minds off of it, off of politics, off of national coverage and spending with each other, and he wanted to bring it right back to him. At the same time, with the Biden administration, they may have had the best intentions, but the intention communicated to a lot of people was, we don't care about Easter. We want to talk about this politically divisive topic right now in the middle of the whole thing. So that was frustrating.
I agree. And that's why I really wanted to talk about it today. Would you say if shock is a strategy, that we're all doing it wrong now, that we should be doing more shocking communications? Or is that just the strategy that the bully pulpit is taking? Curious. What do you think?
Well, once again, I think it's less about shocking and more about authentic. I think that there are a lot of folks that could swear if they wanted to or say outlandish things, and then it's up to the American public as to decide whether or not that sounds authentic coming out of that person's mouth, or whether or not that person's a joke, or that person's just playing a role or faking it, or so on or so forth. Listen, we've all worked for folks, Harry Reid, God bless his soul, was an extremely authentic person. He said things a lot of times that he, one, got in trouble for, two, would never apologize for. And you look back on it now and it seems like just, it seems very minor as compared to some of the things that the president has said. But no one ever doubted that he didn't come up with those things by himself. No one ever sat there, and I think about the reporters that we know and what have you, ever said, like, you wrote that for him? No. They knew that, like, when Harry Reid spoke a lot of time, regardless of what his spokespeople and speechwriters said, that was him coming from the heart. And yes, you might, as a politician or as a corporate leader, get dinged for that. But I also do think that you get credit for when people think that it's like, no, that's really that person. So
that's a good point. What do you say, Ron?
I would say if you're a CEO, if you're an organizational head, you have to be really careful about this, about amping up the volume on your language, because it is a slippery slope. Once you set a standard, you might not get the attention you want next time unless you go up another notch. So you have to think about that. You have to think about who your audiences are, who you're talking to. You're talking to your consumers. You're talking to your employees. You're talking to politicians, the regulators, the legislators, everyone. So what are you trying to convey, and why are you doing what you're doing? If you're a CEO and you're raising the volume, then there better be a really good reason for it.
Oh, that's a great point. And it dawned on me too, both of you and myself have all worked for very exciting and authentic members of a variety of different places. This just feels like a level beyond where we've been before. And so that's why I felt like it was a moment to discuss.
It is, and listen, I think that your original question, there's a lot of validity in there that have we crossed this Rubicon? And I don't think I truly answered it. The answer is yes, right? Because let's go back and, the viewing audience, kind of let them know how old we really are. Do you remember when Dick Cheney was caught on a hot mic with George Bush talking about, and for the life of me, I cannot remember the reporter's name.
The New York Times reporter.
New York Times or Time reporter. And
Adam, oh my gosh. It's going to come back.
Good luck. But more or less, he called him a major league asshole. And am I allowed to say that? And I just
It's your own show.
So he called him a major league asshole. And then this was a thing for, not only did it lead the news for like the next several days, kept coming up and coming up and coming up. I can't imagine that someone getting caught on a hot mic now, especially if you're a politician, you get into a little bit of trouble. But if I'm the spokesperson or I'm the politician, I'm really going to sit there and be like, come on, really? And then kind of go through chapter and verse of take your fake outrage and shove it up your you-know-what. After it's like, we've sat here and we've listened to this and this and this, and we've seen this and this and this, and now I'm saying this, and all of a sudden, the outrage is going to turn on me. So I think in that sense, we've crossed the Rubicon, where I think you're going to be seeing less, at least on the political side, maybe not on the corporate side, but you're going to be seeing less politicians, even if they didn't mean to do it or what have you. I think you're going to be seeing less apologizing.
Well, I think we're going to have to wait and see. With that, we're going to make sure we mark the explicit marking for this episode. Thank you for keeping it real. We'll be back with you next week with the ROKK Rundown.